Thank you so much for joining us here at Johnson & Wales with Advising the College Equestrian. My name is Laura Hauser. I'm an admissions counselor here at Johnson & Wales. I specialize in working with students interested in our College of Arts and Sciences, which, lucky for me, includes our equine program. So I'm very excited about today. This is one of my favorite topics to speak about with students. I grew up riding horses, so since I was 8 years old, I've been pretty active within this industry, not on a professional level, but more of a hobby in my spare time. I still lease a horse today, a 10-year-old thoroughbred mare named Layla, and work part-time at my local stable. So I have some experience in this industry, and I'm very excited to share a lot of this knowledge with you through Dirk Fogg, our IHSA coach and professor here at the university, and as well as Crystal Taylor, our IDA coach and another professor for our Equine Studies program. Just an update for you all today. We are recording this session. We will not be seeing your photos as we record this session. It will all be of the PowerPoint, but do know that the recording is in session as we move along today. So a general overview about what to expect. The goal of this session, at the end of the day, we can't teach you everything there is to know about the world of equestrian sports, about college equestrian, about the equine industry. But in this hour, we can hopefully help you prepare your students. So we're going to talk about how riders can prepare in high school, what their options are for collegiate riding, what coaches are looking for in these athletes, and what riders should be looking for in these programs. All right, so we'll provide some questions today that you can help prompt your students with. They'll understand the answers they're getting when they ask these of schools, but it will be helpful for you as you start these conversations. Again, we don't expect you to know everything, but we want to help you help your students. Bonus, at the end, we'll also talk a little bit about what to look for in an equine major. So Johnson & Wales, we have some great offerings here at the university, and I know both Dirk and Crystal will talk to you more about those. So again, like I said, welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us for this very unique session. We're very excited about it. And again, my East Coast friends, we promise to keep this to an hour today so we can get you off and ready for your weekend at 2 o'clock. So with that, I will introduce to you Coach Crystal Taylor.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. So glad you could join us. I've been with the university here at Johnson & Wales for 20 years. I've been a IDA coach, which is the dressage team coach, for the last 20 years, and also equine faculty. I've got a master's in business education. I've got my USDF bronze medal. I'm also a USDF certified instructor. And I'm also an active competitor and judge out there. I judge a lot of schooling shows in the summer, but pretty much I'm here coaching the team and teaching during the school year. So I'm gonna pass it on to Dirk Fogg now so he can introduce himself.
Thank you, Crystal and Laura, and thank you all for joining us today. It really is exciting for us, and I'll echo, I've 18 years now at Johnson & Wales, both as a faculty member in the Equine Studies program and as the head coach for the IHSA team. And just like Crystal, you know, the commitment that all our coaches have for our student athletes is really heartfelt. And so, you know, why I'm here as a faculty member, I have an MBA in global leadership. I also lead the study abroad program that it goes to Munster, Germany to ride. So we have a dedicated equine study abroad program, and I'm a USHJ certified
next hour
instructor. I'm going to let that go with me because I think we really should spend more time talking about what it is you all are here interested in, and that's riding opportunities for your high school athletes as they go on to college. So we can pop on that next slide there. Thanks so much, Laura. And what we thought was, first we should probably get you a little bit of an image with some terms that we'll use throughout today. And if you already are familiar with riding and equestrian sports, this will be a nice review for you. And if it's a brand new idea, at least maybe we'll give you a little image that puts in your head. So when you're talking to your student athletes, or your high school students that want to go on to college and become athletic, involved in athletics, you'll have an image. There are 5 main disciplines that have competitive opportunities at college levels. We have the hunter seat equitation, where students can both jump and perform what we say on the flat, so without jumping. We have dressage. We have the Western disciplines, which have a blend of both horsemanship classes and reining. Reining is a little bit of a faster, more energized version with slides, as you can see here in the picture. And there is a growing group, 2 new organizations within college athletics for equestrian in the last decade, with saddle seat and eventing. And this allows us, as college equestrian programs, athletic programs, not just our academics, but all of our athletic programs, to really offer a great opportunity, a wide range of opportunity and accessibility to students with all different equine backgrounds. So we'll hop on there next there. And now we get to do a little bit of alphabet soup. This is probably, you'll have access to this video later. All of these organizations have their own websites. You certainly, as a high school counselor, don't need to be memorizing these. But we have a national governing body that oversees all of our equestrian sports, or the majority of equestrian sports, at the private sector, in private, for both junior riders and adults and professionals. And that's the United States Equestrian Federation. And under that, there are 11 different breeds and 18 different disciplines. The 3 largest are the United States Hunter Jumper Association, the United States Dressage Federation, and the United States Eventing Association. This really encompasses the mass of riders certainly within the East Coast of our country and along the Western coast, but throughout the whole country. There is one other large organization for private riding, if you will, and competitions, these all sanctioned competitions in riding, called the American Quarter Horse Association. So those 2 organizations really oversee probably 90+% of organized, national ranked equine competitions. Now, there are some other opportunities for people to ride. Number one, you don't have to be a competitive rider to enjoy the equestrian sport and your horse. And even as you come to college, we will have students that have ridden as a hobby only. And as they come to college, they may decide to join a team. So that opportunity can be there. There are one large high school organization that we're going to jump to here in a moment, called the Interscholastic Equestrian Association. And then there are 2 organizations that really focus on helping students at the high school level contact and find the best fit for their college with equestrian involved, with a team. And that's the Talent Search and the CPI, or College Preparatory Invitational. Again, both have great websites that you can head out there. But maybe we'll jump on here next to the IEA. So we want you to have a view of what it looks like. We're all maybe familiar with soccer. So you have your United States Soccer Association, and then you have regional clubs and sports. In riding, we have those previous scrambled egg terms that we just went through. And the largest group for students that do not own their own horses per se is the Interscholastic Equestrian Association. And when you go to an IEA event, you will actually ride horses that you get assigned or pick out of a hat. So it's a random draw. You're not coming with the horse that you normally work with. All those other scrambled eggs, normally those competitions, riders are arriving at competition with a horse that they've been working with at home, with their trainers, and are ready to go compete. For IEA, it really mimics what we do at the collegiate level. And so it's grown to more than 1,500 teams. They're actually, I think, over 14,000 riders now, and they're across the country. And they have 4 different levels of competition. So I want to put this in I was thinking of a good type of analogy for you all. Maybe if we think about track and field, you could have different events that you would compete in within track and field. Some are sprinters, some are distance runners, some are into the field events, hurling or jumping or so forth. The IEA helps set that up. So we have these 4 levels, and they have both jumping and flat in the hunter seat. They have Western, where they do both Western horsemanship and reining. And they've just added recently dressage, because that's such a growing spot and number in our industry, in the overall equine industry. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and many of your students may be involved with IEA presently without you necessarily knowing it, because these IEA teams do not all run directly through a high school. Some are associated with their school, but many are running out of private equine facilities across the country. And so, if you're collecting data and trying to get a feel for your students and what they're involved in outside of, high school organized sports, maybe adding in on the little questionnaire or the Survey Monkey we all use here about IEA or any other equine sports, you may grab some more knowledge than you realize. I hope that's a okay way to add. And now we're going to transfer in from high school to college. So the largest and oldest college equestrian sport or organization is the Intercollegiate Horse Shows Association. And this was founded in 1967. It's grown to more than 400 teams nationwide, including parts of Canada, and it's close to 10,000 riders. These teams represent both varsity sports and club sports. And in every region, onto zones and then national championships, athletes can compete as individuals and or on a team. So this really opens up the accessibility for riders. And indeed, if you go to the IHSA Inc.com website, you can have access to the list of all the member schools, and you can, it's a wonderful website. And I know Coach Taylor will talk about IDA. They also have a great website. These are really great resources for you all to use as you're coaching and guiding your students looking for a college that will fit them. So, with 400 plus schools, whatever major they're interested in, kids that ride, kids that students that are horse people usually want to continue that passion onto college, whether it's for the idea of wanting to compete to get to a national championship or having that horse as their outside, peace place to go to while they're in school riding and working hard. And so the IHSA provides that with these teams. Again, some are school varsity sponsored teams. Students can create club sports and even work with an independent riding facility in the area of their college. So it is not necessary that the college actually has their own facility. Although, as you'll see later, we'll talk about that more. IHSA, it can be co-ed teams. So both the young men and women can compete. As we'll see later, there are some associations that have limited it to only female competition. There are additional academic awards and internships available through the IHSA for our student athletes. And like the IEA, these student athletes show up at a host venue, wherever they're going for their competition that day, and will ride horses provided by the host school. And think of it really like a track meet. There will be multiple teams coming for one day to compete, both for individual success and team success. And I think, Laura, we can pop to that next one. In the IHSA, there are 2 main disciplines that we talked about earlier that we can have students active in. There are hunt seat teams and there are Western teams. In each of these, there are multiple levels. Now, this is what's a little unique here with some of the collegiate equine riding programs. Their goals were set up to not only promote great equestrian competition, but both, especially the IHSA, and I know Coach Taylor Crystal will talk about the IDA, both organizations really focus on bringing students into equestrian as well. So we are not just looking for our very top talented students from the nation. We certainly are. We also want to provide opportunities for riders of multiple levels to compete against other athletes of a similar level. And this develops a larger range of student involvement. It gives more accessibility to our students and more inclusivity. And I think I get to pitch this over to Coach Taylor now.
Okay, thank you, Coach Bog. So I'll talk a little bit about the Intercollegiate Dressage Association, which is also known as IDA. This kind of started out as a club sport in the 1990s, and then it became an official organization in 2001. So it's a little bit more new. It's been around, I guess, the last 20 years now. There's about membership colleges and universities. We have about 80 right now and still growing. Riders from all over the USA and Canada are out there on teams. And we do, I know there's a question about international students. They can definitely come over and be, yes, they can join the teams. They can join IDA and I believe also IHSA. Yeah, we welcome all students from everywhere. The IDA is also affiliated with the USDF and the US Equestrian Association. Again, like Coach Fogg had said, we have levels of all riders. We need riders that are just starting out, that are new to dressage, and then we have all kinds of levels that I think are on the next slide, but so we also need the advanced riders, so all levels. The other, key point is there are very affordable membership fees for both IHSA and IDA. And again, it kind of depends on different colleges. If it's a club sport, varsity sport, on the fees, we're lucky at Johnson & Wales that we are part of varsity athletics. So there are no extra fees for our students, no practice fees, no travel fees, no hotel fees. So that's the key part here. But moving on, horses are all provided by the host schools and drawn. We do host, the IDA competitions here at Johnson & Wales and the IHSA shows here. That's a question we'll talk about later, but it's always nice to know if the college you're going to does host shows. For IDA, only 3 riders are needed to compete on a team, but 4 is where you're going to be more competitive. I added that in because if you end up having students that go to a college that doesn't have a team or an IDA team, they can always work with the university to get a team going. So it is easy to start up. We do encourage that also out there. The other part is we do have the USDF quiz challenge that they offer every year, and they have the actual final part of that at the national championships every year. So we'll go to the next slide. For the IDA, each rider is coached for 10 minutes by the coach, and then they go in and they ride their test. And some of you may not be as experienced with like dressage riding or may wonder what is dressage. I know a lot of people, and even my husband, yes, still has a hard time saying the word dressage. He thinks it's foreign. But it's a little bit, some people say it's kind of like, yes, a horse ballet, you're getting your horse to dance. It's training them. It's a systematic training where our goal is always for the rider and the horse to be harmonious using invisible aids. Some of the tests they do walk, trot, canter. Sometimes they're doing leg yields where they ask them to go sideways or trot lengthenings. So it's being able to execute certain movements on a horse. And it's hard when you get on a horse, you don't know. It really improves the riders to be good catch riders. They get on, they get a feel for the horse, then they go in and ride their test in front of a judge. And the levels are listed there: first, upper, lower, and intro. And also the IDA also has Dressage C equitation classes at the shows also. So that as you heard before, there's like only 3 to 4 to a team, but so they have the test riding, but they also have equitation classes at the end of the day. So you have more riders able to get out there and are able to show.
And Professor Taylor, Coach Taylor, what is equitation?
Equitation is basically, riding so that you have the proper form, the proper seat, the proper aids. You want to, again, you're always looking for that rider that's invisible with all their aids. When the horse canters, it just happens. So, they're working towards being able to develop the aids and cues to ride a horse and be basically harmonious with the correct position.
Great. And I think of it kind of, if anyone's familiar with gymnastics, right? You want to be effective in all of your movements, you're pointing your toes, your fingers, all of that throughout. So they're judging that gymnast on how they are performing the movements, not just on the movement itself. So I think that's a good comparison for equitation when you think about that.
Yes, no, super.
And before we move on, maybe Coach Fogg, when you're at a competition, are you also coaching your rider before they enter the ring for IHSA?
Yes, and I also see a couple, as we're presenting, I'm not always as quick at catching on the questions. We do. When we arrive at a competition for IHSA, the minimum number for a team is 8 riders for the day. But many of the competitions, as I alluded to before with track and field, you can often bring 20, 30 students for that day. What we will do is we will watch all the horses warm up. And during that time, we're coaching our riders and making notes about specific, strategies of how we may decide to jump the course or ride a specific horse. And then when the students find out which horse they're riding, the athletes realize which horse, we'll help them get ready to get on the horse, and then they go and compete. So they don't have that warm-up phase that you have in the dressage. If they're jumping, they're going to have to go out and jump their course. The horse has been warmed up, but they have to be really good at catch riding and heading off to the first fence. So both in practice and on the day of competition, we're always trying to hone and develop those skills for these students to get on and listen to the horse, have a plan before you start, and then head on to what you're doing. And, really these skills, here, and I know this for Coach Taylor as well, we think about this. We do this as a profession every day. And we realize that some of our students, we've been very fortunate that we both had students that have continued on to become professional horsemen. But, the majority of students we have do not. They go on into some other career. And yet those skills of, the self-reliance, the really communication with the horse, the watching and listening, what they develop being on a team with other young women and men, these are transferable skills that help a student throughout the rest of their life. And it's a wonderful moment. And the other part, yes, the IHSA definitely is open to international riders. I know personally I've had some on my team, South Korea, Turkey, coming out of Europe, from Central America. And I know the dressage, as Coach Taylor mentioned, does as well. It is for riders who ride dressage, that's a very easy, direct correlation. It would be like as if you figure skated in Europe and you figure skate in America. For the hunter seat and Western, we're looking at some slightly different nuances. And I don't want to get too heavy into that detail. That could be a whole afternoon of discussion. But suffice it to say that we welcome our international riders. The IHSA absolutely, like the IDA, offers a wide range of opportunity for these international riders to come and have a chance to compete at college as a collegiate athlete. And again, whether you're with a club sport or a varsity sponsored sport at your school, it makes no difference.
And I think to that point, I know we do have a few international counselors who had registered for this event. So if you're on, welcome. And if you do have questions for your individual countries regarding those differences, as a student does come to the US for these equestrian programs, we will have Professor Fogg and Taylor's contact information at the end. So we can always make those connections and talk about those individual differences. I'm watching this chat as we're going through, so I don't want to have everyone think I'm missing their question or skipping over it. But I just want to ask one clarifying question before we move on, and then remaining questions we will address at the end to keep the session moving. But I think an important question is, what is the difference between IEA in high school and IHSA?
Thank you, and I apologize. Early on, my presentation wasn't very slick. IEA, while we have similar disciplines that the students can continue on in college, like IHSA, with Hunter Seat and Western, IEA is strictly for middle school and high school students. And so their career, if you would end as they go on to college and university. At that point, they now have these different options that we're starting to present now. So IHSA offers the opportunity for students to continue their riding in college in both Hunter Seat and Western. The IDA, is Coach Taylor just presented, gives your students a chance to continue on or develop into, as we both talked about, for dressage. And then I hope that gets that across there. So your feeder organization, I guess, and I don't want it to sound, that's a positive thing. The IEA developed, I think they're about 20 years old now. I can't remember exactly how many years, but they developed following the IHSA format because they wanted to help students who had a desire to ride, who could not afford their own horse, and who wanted to be able to ride while they were in high school. And then it's grown so much, they've included the middle school groups. So that you'll have students out there in your high schools, as I said earlier, that are riding at the IEA, in the IEA. They may not own their own horse. They may go once a week for lesson and go off to their team competitions, reach their national champions as an individual and or as a team rider. And when they go on to college, they're going to want to continue that riding opportunity. And so the IHSA, the IDA, we both offer those opportunities. And there are some others here that we're going to touch base with you here in a moment.
Great, thank you.
And that sort of leads us to our next one. So, and again, this started in '89. The NCEA, National Collegiate Equestrian Association. And right now they have on their website listed 26 teams. I want you to be sure, all, as you are advising your students. Now, let me tell you what they are first, and then I'll get into that. So the NCEA are for, again, college athletes, equestrian athletes who would like to ride either in the Hunter Seat, so jumping and the flat, or Western, horsemanship and reining. They only have team competitions. There are 5 riders per team at each competition. Now, as we mentioned earlier, in IDA, you can have as few as 3, but at times, just like with the IHSA, you can bring 12, 15, 20, even 30 riders to a day's competition, similar to what you would have at a track meet, where you can bring everybody, or there are track meets where you're only allowed 1 athlete per event. So IHSA and IDA allow for quite a large range of that and allow for more students to get opportunities to compete and ride. NCEA is always head to head. So only one school invites one other school, and they only have 5 riders per team. So wonderful competition. However, it's more limiting that way. So I just want people to be aware of that. And if you have a student who starts talking to you about the NCEA, they want to do, or sometimes you will hear a student say NCAA. Those two terms sometimes get a little mixed in here for this organization. Be sure that your student recognizes that the school they're interested in plays the NCEA format, or some of them listed actually have teams that only compete in IHSA. And so I really encourage you all as advisors, as you have students come in and start to throw these scrambled eggs or alphabet soup out at it, with all the letters to remember, take a moment, head to that IDA, the Intercollegiate Dressage Association website, head to ihsainc.com website to see the list of schools, or head here to NCEA so that you really can see the list of schools. The NCEA is predominantly looking for only the top tier athlete in equestrian coming out of high school. So they do not offer as wide a range of opportunity for multiple levels of riders. Excellent competition, wonderful group. They're also all women. So if you have a young man who's a top national competitive rider, he will not have an opportunity to ride on an NCEA team. However, if he's a dressage rider, he could certainly ride in the IDA, or if he is a hunter seat or Western rider, an IHSA school would be glad to have him. So I want you to think about that. D1, good question there. So NCEA does predominantly focus on D1 teams, and they follow NCAA Division I recruiting rules, competition rules, weeks in season. So the NCEA teams are often like any other college sport. They're only allowed, I think it's 11 weeks of competition. They're not riding all year. Many IHSA and IDA teams actually get their students going in the very first week or 2 weeks of school, and will give them the opportunity to ride through the whole season, because we do not fall under NCAA guidelines. Okay. And so that's an important piece to know. If you have a student who comes to you and says, it's very important that I can ride the whole time I'm at college, and it's, it motivates me, it's my outlet, it's my passion. And you say, okay, let's look at the different schools you're looking at. For instance, if they're thinking of an Ivy League school, there are a lot of the Ivies that have an IHSA team. Some of them are listed under the NCEA website, but they actually compete in IHSA. So that rider, if they're not in that very high caliber coming out of the junior ranks in the equitation, the hunter seat, or the Western, they will have an opportunity to ride still. So I think that's important for us to really balance.
One of the first things that I'll share that I think of with this division is Division I football, right? It's all those top ranked athletes. They're on a very rigid schedule. It's a very rigid recruitment process. So that's the way when I look at, and this is just one way that I consider them. It's different for everyone, but the IHSA and IDA, it's the athletes of all calibers, all levels, growing up through the ranks as they progress within their riding throughout college. Those Division I football players, these NCEA riders, they're entering in at that high level competition from the start.
Right. And really, and I see some tie in that with a couple questions that are popping up. So please don't misunderstand though. Both IDA and IHSA and the hunt seat and then the Western have these top tier riders competing. And, IHSA, we have riders that have gone on to the Olympics later in life. And that's always a great piece. And so both of those organizations are certainly recruiting and looking for top tier athletes. The difference is we are also looking for a wide range of athletes. There are a few schools out there now who have NCEA teams that compete in D1 and have a club sport. It's completely separate for IHSA or IDA. So that's important. There are only a handful of those out there, but they are out there. And the reason is we have that much interest from students at the college level who want to ride. So I think it's really important that way. Scholarships are possible through NCEA. Some schools in the IHSA will offer scholarships, but normally that is for academics and not directly athletics. I'm just trying to, we'll hop into that, but I see another question here. Yes, if you are on an NCEA team, you have to go through the NCAA clearinghouse. So, with their GPAs. Most schools, if you are a varsity sport, regardless of whether you're NCAA or NCEA or IHSA and IDA, they will also have GPA requirements. Club sports, it depends on every school. So that would really be up to each individual university or collegiate institution on what their rules are for club sport. Okay. Yes, there are only really truly a handful, well, maybe not a handful, but there are limited full ride scholarships to ride in college. And so that's important to keep in mind. I think, as Laura mentioned, you think about football, there are a lot of football players who are phenomenal players in high school. To make that D1, you may or may not be that strong. There are some football players who could make a D1 team, but are looking for the D2 or D3 atmosphere, and maybe are looking for a major that's not offered at a D1 school. And of course, what we all hope is that our student athletes are students, and the athletes are the icing on the cake. And with that in mind, I'll just try to give you some other insights on other opportunities of collegiate riding. You have 3 other main groups: the American National Riding Commission, ANRC. This is a unique competition at college where students will bring horses from their school to compete. And it is usually just a one-time-a-year event. Then you have United States Equestrian Association, United States Eventing Association, Intercollegiate Eventing. The Collegiate Eventing Association are for students with their own horses. And then you have the Saddle Seat Association. And they're a little similar to how IDA and IHSA are set up. But, a great way to keep all of this in some sort of order is to go and look at the United States Equestrian Federation College Handbook. And that gives you a little blurb on each of our organizations that we presented here today. And again, that's a great start. And then I really encourage you all, please don't hesitate. Obviously, you can reach out to us, but also each organization's websites are very well presented, and they help you to gain that information.
Great. And I did see a question if somebody could place that web link in the chat. I can't copy it from the PowerPoint right now, but I will add it to the very end when we conclude. And if I can't, we'll definitely send that out as an email, or feel free to take a picture of that screen. Pretty easy Google search as well for US Equestrian Collegiate Handbook. Oh, thanks, Debbie, for adding that in for us.
You guys are fast.
Everyone's good here.
Crystal, would you like to share a little what you're looking for? And I'll jump in there too. I think both of us as college coaches, when you all are advising your student who wants to go on to college, there are definitely some certain things. So I'll pass this off to Crystal. Coach Taylor.
Sorry about that. I'm out at the Equine Center. The phone's ringing.
No worries.
So what do we look for as coaches? Basically, I want students that are willing to learn. I want students that are, passionate about riding horses, love the sport. That's the main thing. I want students that want to be part of the team, that want to develop good camaraderie and, network with each other, have a great, I'm going to shoot the phone in a minute, but no, have a great commitment to the sport. Basically we want them to reach out to us if they're interested in our college. I think all coaches do. We want to know a little bit about their competition records. Are they part of a specific membership, whether it's, the United States Hunter Jumper Association, the USDF, USEA, USEF. So we want to know a little bit about that. We always would love to see a short video, doesn't have to be long, very short video. For them to send. We want to make sure that, yes, they are committed to being academic. Most of, I would say, of our equestrian athletes being on the team do work together. A lot of them do have a little bit of a study hall night. They get together. Statistics show out there that the athletes do have higher GPAs in general, which is nice. They're out there, they're working at it, and we do really push that comes first, academics. And again, we want our students to be coachable. Like I said, the main thing is that they're willing, they're open-minded, they're ready to develop new skills. We want students that take the lead. There's so many leadership options to be as being an athlete. So we do have all kinds of programs, and a lot of our students do turn into great leaders. So it's basically a great opportunity of being on the team. And college visits, of course, when possible, hopefully when all this COVID is over, yes, we can get back to normal, but we also really encourage students to come and watch a practice. Come out, you meet the team, you know, and again, for the counselors out there, you know, it's really great to get them to go visit the college, talk to the coach, see if the students can go set up an appointment and be able to watch the practice and meet the students, meet the horses, meet everybody. So that's, you know, I guess in a nutshell, it's what I look for.
And maybe I'll jump in there with you too, Crystal. You know, as you said, in this day and age, y'all, we are always happy when students reach out to contact us. If we can't meet in person, the amazing Zoom can get us in touch. And so we are willing. And that's one of the things that is a bit different there. You know, IHSA and IDA coaches have the ability to talk to your students fundamentally at any time. So as you know, because in the high school realm of athletics, when you're reaching out to an NCAA sport, you have to be careful about when and how the coaches talk to your athletes. We have a more open ability to connect and contact. And so that's important for you all to know. And again, you know, to echo what Coach Taylor said, we're really looking for those students who have a commitment and an interest to your school. And we'll be honest, you know, I'll be honest. I remember when I looked at colleges, I did not look at a single college that didn't have an IHSA team, or this will tie into a few of these questions that are popping up on the side, had a very good professional horseman in the area that maybe had nothing to do with the college, but was somebody that I knew of or had learned about and watched and wanted to have the possibility to work with. And so, you know, there's some questions here about students with their own horses. Well, what's wonderful about IDA and IHSA and NCEA, college athletics in the equestrian do not require you to own your own horse. However, we do have quite a number of students who do own their own horses. And regardless of what discipline they're interested in, it could be Western, it could be dressage, it could be eventing, or hunter jumper, or saddle seat, or IC endurance. Many times you can bring your horse to college. And while there may not be the college owned facility that you could board your horse, there may be the opportunity for your student to board in the area. So the Eventing Association for college is the only one that I am aware of that requires you to be able to bring your own horse. And I do not know of any college endurance riding. But having said that, that does not mean that your equestrian that's involved, your student, if they're interested in endurance or eventing or another discipline where they can't be on that team, or there's not a formal college team for you to compete with, there's the possibility that there could be a private barn in the area that can help them continue to ride. We're obviously trying to focus on what we can offer from college.
And I think something with that too that could be said is if your student is an eventer and they do eventing and competing, maybe they go to college and they join an IHSA or an IDA team, right? Because eventing has the dressage, it has the jumping and cross country. So they can work on their dressage skills through an IDA team, and they can work on over fence skills in an IHSA program. So there's still opportunity for these riders. And I think at the end of the day, it's about making them a better rider and keeping them connected with the sport throughout their college career. So that's something that you can always bring up with students as well, is there's still opportunity, even if it's not their exact discipline.
Absolutely. And Laura, I'll jump in here, and I'm sure Coach Taylor and I may bat this all around a bit. But, you know, now really thinking from your point of view, hopefully we've got you not too confused, but a little bit of a picture about what different opportunities for students are out there to ride at the collegiate level. And now it's really about how can you advise your student to look out for that correct college, to find their best fit? And, I'm actually going through this with my own daughter right now. I've twins, they're senior year in high school. And I think we've all been living in the last, year, trying to find colleges where you can't go in person and so on and so forth. It's definitely important for us to have, and I say us from we're receiving the students that y'all are going to be sending us, whether they're interested, it doesn't matter what organization they end up riding at. But we want to have students that come in and are looking, and they should be looking at colleges to say, I want to continue my riding. What type of team do they offer? Is it a varsity sport? Is it a club? Is it open to all majors? Is it a sport that's only, there are occasionally a few schools where they have equine, and we have an equine program. At ours here at Johnson & Wales, our varsity teams are open to every and any major. Some schools will limit that and really focus it predominantly on just their equine students. So your students should be asking that, okay? And then, is the team co-ed? And that can make a difference, especially if you have, some young men that are looking to continue on to ride. Because at certain schools, it will be women-only sports, and so they won't have that opportunity, okay? The competition format, again, whether it's, whichever scrambled egg we use, whichever alphabet soup group, but to ask regardless, if they're an IHSA team, find out how many opportunities there are for those students to ride, not just during the week, but at competitions as well. If they're an NCEA team, how many of the 45 students that are listed on the team compete at throughout the year? How many are only able to practice? Same for IDA, right? And I know now here I'm probably pitching us a little bit, but both Coach Taylor and I, we're a small industry, y'all. We know each other, and we really do have such a commitment to trying to get as many students as possible the chance to compete when they get to college. They may not be in the discipline that they'd love. Again, as Laura mentioned, maybe you're an event rider and there's no event team possible at your school, but you can join the dressage team or the hunt seat team or have another outlet. And I will tell you, there are a lot of students who will join one team and end up joining the other because they love to learn and grow. Likewise, there are students in the hunt seat world in IHSA that will then join the Western team if they offer that, or Western riders who will start to ride some hunt seat so that they grow and expand their knowledge of equestrianism, okay? You want to know, students should be looking as whether or not the team is hosted at a school-owned facility or if it is with a private contractor that the school has a relationship with. And that's very common. There are fewer schools that have school-owned facilities, or teams, I should say, across the country. The majority of them are really out there with private contractors. And that can be a wonderful way for them to continue to compete. Often they can bring their own horse and they can compete at other sanctioned events that are non-collegiate championship events, okay? Ask about additional fees. Ask about how often they ride each week. Students, we all want to be involved in our sport as much as often as possible. If I can ride 5 times a day, 5 days a week, that may be my dream, but it's going to be hard to get to class. So I've got to balance those two things. But, really make sure your students are out there asking these questions at every university or college they go to. What is the team format? What's the commitment both on the horse and during practice and outside? As varsity sports, we have GPA requirements. We have study hall requirements. Do you or don't you? Or is there tutoring available to your student, right? So each school, these different athletics sometimes have that benefit. How many riders are on the team and how often you'll ride. And I think we can kick to that next slide.
And one other thing that I'm not sure if we put on our little PowerPoint was we do have students that come through that want to also compete in other sports. Like currently, I have a student that's on the field hockey team. She's also on the IDA team. So that's a question too. Not all schools may allow you to do both sports, but that's a good question to raise to them and talk about them in the beginning to make sure you are able to kind of be able to juggle and do both sports while you're at college. So.
Crystal, do you want to take over this slide or you?
Sure. You know, what students should look for. Are there yearly tryouts? Are there tryouts in the fall? Are there tryouts in the winter and spring? You know, it's again, a good question to raise to see how often there are tryouts. Again, we've talked about is the team club or varsity? Our teams here at Johnson Wales are varsity, but there's plenty of schools out there that have club. There's nothing, you know, both do the same thing, but again, you know, and again, it depends on the school. Also, you have to check. Obviously, team club is a little bit more student organized. They have to fund it a little bit more, but some of them are able to get a lot of funds from outside, you know, from out there doing volunteer work and fundraising. So again, it really depends on the school. You'd have to look into that a little bit more. What are the other team commitments? You know, at Johnson Wales here, we also have our students do community service. My students go out there, we volunteer at Water Fire, we volunteer at all kinds of different events going on through the year. So again, there's all kinds of other commitments that may be out there. Also, do I need to bring my own horse? That's a good question. Again, you definitely don't need to at most of the colleges, universities out there, right? But there are some that you may need to. Are there opportunities to ride, compete outside of the collegiate organization with personal horse? So again, that's a question to rise up. And, you know, and a lot of times there's tons of opportunities. You can board your horse somewhere else. There may be other places you can go out and compete your horse. What are the local barns in the area for extra riding or personal horse boarding? Again, you want to know how many barns are in the area. We are very lucky in this area. There's millions out there. So again, you want to make sure you have that option for boarding. Is there additional opportunity to ride for academic credit outside of or in addition to the team? So you want to see if, you know, some students and with Johnson Wales, our students are able to ride. If they're on a riding team, they are able to do riding classes. So they get the credit for riding classes also. And there's, you know, opportunities like that at other colleges also, but that is a question you want to also ask, because some students want to ride as much as they can. Some colleges you practice once or twice a week. Some you have a gym workout also, but if you have the opportunity to ride 2 more times a week or 3 more times a week, then it's a great opportunity for students that love riding.
And again,
you know,
we're going to be.
You want to add, Dirk?
Oh, sorry.
I'll let Laura hop in there and then I'll grab some of these questions that are popping up.
Perfect. I was just going to say these questions, obviously we're not providing you every answer to every school, but the goal is to maybe take these questions and give them to your students as they're making the search. So you might not understand every answer, right? We talked about alphabet soup earlier, but your students are going to be able to interpret those answers to help them make the decision. And I think that's the goal for everyone here today, is how to help the student to make their list. And these are questions that can really help guide their list. So if they know that, yes, I do want to go somewhere where I can bring my own horse, or there's a spot nearby for me to bring my own horse, right? That's going to help guide them in terms of making their list. Or I know someone asked if there's a way to search for schools that have the equestrian facility on or near the campus. I'm not sure if that platform exists out there or that search filter, but as you start having the student build a list, they're important questions that they should ask, right? So for Johnson & Wales, we have our own facility right here in my background, but it's about 20 minutes from our campus. We don't have a spot in downtown Providence for that space, but our students are getting 2 unique best of both worlds experiences with this rural area as well. And we provide the transportation back and forth for our students. So these are all questions a student should ask, and they can come up with the answers to.
And Laura, actually, that's where you grabbed me, you got ahead of me, which is great. So one of the search engines, when you go to ihsainc.com and you scroll through the schools, often you will have that information. Is it a varsity? Is it a club? Is it located on campus? Some of that information is filtered through, but as Laura suggests, because there are so many different dynamics within the equine, college equestrian competition and competitive environment, it really is great. At least you have a source between IDA, IHSA, NCEA, and the others that you can go to and find the schools that are presently involved. And again, as Coach Taylor mentioned, if you have a dressage student that goes on to a college that does not have a dressage team, there's a possibility of developing it as a club sport. And that's likewise for IHSA as well, whether it's Western or Hunter Seat, or both. And so, we really do, in our equine environment, we are looking for leaders. And that leadership, again, whatever your major, whatever your career choice is, learning to ride, being able to get on a different horse that you don't know and have 10 minutes or just the chance to adjust your stirrups and then have to go jump a course or go and compete, you really learn a lot about yourself. And again, that brings it back. I mean, what's the purpose of college athletics? Well, for those few people that are really phenomenal athletes, maybe they get to play in the Super Bowl or the World Series or go to the Olympics. But we all know that there's a whole lot more athletes coming out of high school that want to continue their athletic passion into college. It's going to help them succeed at school. And these are opportunities that are out there, and especially for our equine athletes, we're focused on here today. Laura, I don't know if you want to pop to the next one or if there are more
Sure.
questions there.
Yeah, let's pop to the last one, and then we can take some questions.
Yeah. And I'll play for this again. And I know Coach Taylor, Crystal, you'll jump in here too with me. But, what's unique at Johnson & Wales, and there are, schools throughout the country, different search engine, and that's a whole different hour presentation for you all. But we do have equine programs at Johnson & Wales. And these are separate from our teams, from our 2 varsity teams. Many students want to go on and major in an equine program, equine business management, equine science. These students are passionate about it. Predominantly, they're choosing to have a career in the equine industry. But just like all our students that go off to major in math or science or some other major, we want to make sure they're learning great transferable skills and knowledge, specifically for the equine industry in our program. But we also provide them with skills and knowledge that will transfer elsewhere, really strong business background that can help them in any business opportunity they want, whether it's to manage their own farm, to start their own business that supports equine, or to do something elsewhere. And of course, we have alumni that have done all that. But when you're advising students for an equine college program, it is very important for you to be able to differentiate, or for that student, whether or not that facility is owned and supported by the university, or is it a private contractor that is providing the location for the students to work at. Clearly find out what type of degrees they offer, science, business. Within the science, is it reproduction oriented or whatever? And is there riding or non-riding? What disciplines? Hands-on experience. One of our pillars at JWU is about creating experiential education. Our students are in the barn every year of their degree to get their hands dirty, to learn and apply not just the theory, but to develop the hands-on skill. And so, where is the program located? As Laura mentioned, we're about 20 minutes outside of Providence because there's not much open land right in downtown Providence. Some of the rural schools will have facilities abutting campus. So ask about the professionals in the area. Ask about the professional experience of the faculty. All our faculty, Coach Taylor and myself both are and our other faculty are involved not just at teaching, but also involved in the equine industry as a whole outside of college. And so that helps us stay up to date and abreast with what's going on in the industry. All right. Do you need to board your horse, or can you? Those questions we've always sort of bounced around. And, what equipment do you need? I think you guys can read all that. And I know this is going to be pre-recorded. So I'm going to try to wrap up with that so we can get on to skills, unless you guys have anything to answer or add in there for us.
No, I think the important thing to say is I know a few people are jumping off as we hit 2 o'clock as promised. So we wrapped up just in time. I do just want to put our contact information up. We're staying on for a Q&A, but if anyone's leaving and they want to take a quick screenshot of this, please feel free. But we will provide you with some answers to these questions and the questions that are coming through the chat following this session, because I know some people are still interested in that. So happy to do that for everyone. But I think now if Coach Taylor, if you have nothing to add to that piece, maybe we should start answering some of these questions that we have left over. Sound good? All right, let me scroll up to a couple we might have missed. So one of the questions that came in was, so can a student do eventing, dressage, and jumping at the same school with the same team, or are they limited to a discipline? So I think first question would be, can they be on both the IHSA and IDA team at the same time?
That will depend on the school. And there are schools that will allow that. Absolutely. And then there are others that are not, just because we're trying to create as many opportunities for an athlete as possible, for as many athletes as possible, I should say.
So in Johnson and Wales, would a student be able to do that or no?
We try to ask the student which team they prefer. It's very difficult because we have overlapping competition days. So in the past, geez, Crystal, I can't remember the last time. We've definitely have had students that have been on the dressage team that will eventually join the hunt seat team, or vice versa. They've gone both ways. But at the same time, we tend not to have, because we're trying to provide as many opportunities for as many athletes to compete. And with that overlap of championship dates and regular competition dates, then that student is really torn between which team to play with. But however, as Coach Taylor mentioned, you certainly can be on another athletic team and on a hunt seat or the dressage team here at Johnson and Wales. And we have students that do that very successfully. When they're in the middle of, say, volleyball or field hockey season, maybe they're a little less involved. And as a coach, we can plan when we're going to use them in our strategy for the team to try to get to that national championship. So is it impossible? No. Is it the norm? Not every day.
And I think from speaking with the two of you, correct me if I'm wrong, a student when trying out here at Johnson and Wales could technically try out for both teams, let you know their preference, and then the two of you would work together to hopefully place them on one of the two. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if a student's torn between them, they don't know which one to try out for, that they might have the best chance of getting a place, there's that opportunity as well. Let's see. Coach Taylor, I know you answered this in the chat, but maybe you could just reiterate aloud some of the careers for students with a passion for equestrian.
There's a million out there, but I kind of covered some of the main ones, trainers, riders, instructors, judges, they could work in the insurance industry. What other ones was I mean, there's just the retail. We have actually one of our alumni that's opened up her own tack shop in Charleston, North Carolina, is very successful. There's plenty of students that work out in the rehab field, vet technicians. They work at, we've got students that work at Tufts equine hospitals. So, we have students that want to go out and be a farrier. Just the other day, I have a student that wants to go on and become an equine lawyer. So the list goes on and on and on. You want to add more, Professor Fogg?
No, it really, that's a whole nother hour presentation, not to try to dodge it. It really is. And as Professor Taylor talks, and now all of a sudden we're professors, because now we're talking about our academics and we're coaches too. But, really, y'all, our students can go into any branch of the equine industry, and we have them all over the place. And we have students who come through our program who then go on to different industries. And yet they've learned the critical thinking skills, study habits, self-reliance, and the knowledge from the equine industry and our general business classes or science classes that help those students go on and be successful elsewhere. But certainly we always like to wave, we like to wave all their flags because they're wonderful alumni. And there is something unique about I think this is probably true with all athletes. They get a strong connection with their coach or affinity for the university. We certainly have that here at Johnson & Wales, both from a coaching point of view, but also from an academic point of view. Our students really stay close to us. And I know Professor Taylor and I could go on for 3 days about students that were graduated 15 or 20 years ago that we're still in contact with. And they're now colleagues and fellow professionals in the industry, or they're friends. And it's so wonderful and magical to see. And I guess as you're advising your student out there for whatever university they're looking for, absolutely they have to find the right degree that they want. And then they want to find that riding team that fits them, because that's really our focus here today. But, that culture that university or that team or that equine program have is really important for your student. And I think it will show through with an interview, a Zoom meeting. When we can resume going in person, there's nothing like being in the barn firsthand or at the school firsthand. And I see some questions about internships.
Keep that professor hat on.
Yeah, sorry. We dream it up and we'll find it. No, so we have students that are heading out on internships, and now we're looking at this from the Equine Studies program. Clearly, in all different functions within a facility, an equine facility, working as an assistant instructor, an assistant manager, grooming, warm-up riding, teaching, and so forth. Then we have students in internships that are going off to work with international riders and helping and developing their skills under that tutelage. We have students that internship at SmartPack. We've had them at Dover, at multiple retail locations. And the great thing about internships, and I think this is universal in higher education, that hopefully that internship is a 3-month job interview. And many of our students do land that job afterwards. We've sent them off to Horse Shows in the Sun, HITS, which is a major national, it's one of the largest national horse show organizations. Private horse show companies. They run horse show competitions up and down the East Coast and on the West Coast as well. We've sent multiple students there to intern. I can think of 3 that stayed on and started their young career there right out of college. One was there for more than 10 years, I think. It's just vet techs. If you're interested in going on to vet school, doing a summer with a vet, an internship, those possibilities are all there. Feed stores, nutrition, really equine nutrition. Hopefully that covers it a bit.
I think that's a good starting point. Like
Yeah.
you said, millions. 2 other questions that are great that we'll touch. And if anyone has any remaining questions about those equestrian pieces we touched earlier, please feel free to add to the chat. But one, could you just clarify one more time about the difference in club versus varsity athletics when it comes to maybe IHSA and IDA? Is club more informal, organized by students? Could you give us some background?
Yeah, I'll start. Then I think, Crystal, if you have, a little bit different uniqueness there from IDA. So actually, at one point at Johnson & Wales, both our teams were club sports. Now, when you're a club sport, it can be student-driven and student-led, or in our case, it was very much university organized because it fed out of our equine program. But now we're almost on 10 years now as varsity sports. So every school will be unique. If it's a varsity sport, it's going to fall under the umbrella of their athletics department. Traditionally, again, I'm going to make blanket statements here. We'll find an exception to every rule. So varsity sports tend to fall under your athletics. Normally, there are little to no fees with that. Club sports can be sort of one of 2 ways. They can fall under a tight leadership of the university from a faculty or advisor. They'll all have a faculty advisor, or they may be very student driven. Traditionally, clubs will have some fees attached to them. In some cases, the students are paying for everything in their club. In other cases, depending on the university, that club is fairly well supplemented or supported financially, and the students may just have to pay a little out of pocket. But that's an absolutely really key question as you're advising your students. Make sure as they're looking at the colleges to ride, not just how often do I ride, but what fees are involved in that? And what is the structure of the club? Is it highly supported by the university? Is it driven predominantly by the students? And here's what's wonderful, and I know it's, I can speak for the IHSA, both Hunt Seat and Western. We have had national champions, both individuals and even teams, that are coming out of club sports. So it's out there and it's possible. So you don't have to think of a club as an opportunity to just ride and not be competitive. You have both opportunities available to you. And Crystal, I think you probably have had some wonderful individuals, and I don't know about your teams as well in IDA that are clubs.
Yeah, no, we do. We have a lot of them that are clubs in this region, and they've done great. They've done, yeah.
And so you'll have varsity teams competing against club teams as well, right? It's not a separate division. Like when you think of, again, going back to football, Division I, Division II, Division III club, most often your clubs aren't playing your varsity teams, but in equestrian.
Right. You do, absolutely. Right. Because you know what, the horse, regardless of what discipline or organization you're competing in, the horse doesn't know that you're a D1 or D3 or you're an English major or you're a philosophy major. It just interacts with your skills as an equine athlete. And so, you know, it won't know that you're a club or a varsity rider. It's just going to know, are you a really talented horse person? Are you in that spot? Did you have your great day? Or is this the day that we don't dance well together? And all those possibilities are out there. That's what makes, you know, sport. And the horse is the great equalizer, y'all. Male, female, varsity, club, it doesn't matter. It doesn't know and it doesn't care. It performs based on your skill. And as coaches, we're always trying to help you as a student athlete, an equine student athlete, develop those skills, your listening ability, the use of your aids. We always say, in other words, how you communicate with the horse so that you can get the very best performance.
So one last question. If I've missed any questions, please feel free, add those back in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. If either of you are familiar with this process or could speak to it, for students who ride rodeo, is there a different association or process and may or may not be on the same colleges that offer equestrian? So would this be included under that college equestrian umbrella or anything you could speak to that? I'm not sure if either of you are familiar.
I'm not that familiar. I know out west, right? A lot of the Western colleges have rodeo teams.
I'll take a stab at it because, and you know what, here's our weakness now today. We're really looking at this from the East Coast point of view. Crystal's absolutely right. There are some rodeo teams out there. I am not I am not well-versed or familiar with their association, but it does exist. And that's our miss. I really apologize for that. So there is the potential. It's a much smaller niche. But I think if you have a student that's in that genre and looking for that opportunity, I'll bet you a good Google search will help them get on their way. And I apologize that I don't have more information on you. I shouldn't have missed that.
That's all right. I think it's okay to own those things rather than making them up. So I appreciate that answer. Yes, and we do have an event on February 15th, and that's going to be in a come to class with us on Monday, February 15th. So if you do have any students interested in an equine program or equestrian team, Johnson & Wales will host an interactive tour of our equine center. So that will be a cool event. If anyone, again, has students and they want to register, be right on the Johnson & Wales website under our visit page. All right. But I think that's the last thing for everyone today. I don't see any more questions coming in. But again, feel free at any point to contact myself, Dirk, Crystal. We'll all be happy to answer as best we can on any of these questions coming in, and happy to connect with your students as well if they'd ever like to chat more one-on-one with any remaining questions. But again, thank you so much taking some time. I know last period on a Friday for some of you, so I appreciate you hanging out with us. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for joining us. Stay well.